Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 69, featuring Dr. Lemny, an artist and Web3 leader in the space, and also a psychologist with loads of information. Thank you for joining, Dr. Lemny. How you doing?
I'm well, David. Thanks so much for having me. Web3 Warriors, what's up?
Let's go. Let's go. Another Web3 Warriors. We have a lot of history, building in the space, connecting in Clubhouse. We go back to the early Dream Conduit, original Dream Conduit crew. So I really appreciate being able to pick your brains and really just talk Web3 with you anytime we get the opportunity.
Anytime, my brother. I appreciate you having me. I love to talk Web3. Let's
Awesome.
go.
Good stuff. Let's go. Let's go. So thank you everyone for joining. As always, this is the Web3 Warriors. My name is David Chroma. I'm the host. I go by Chrome in the Metaverse. And today we're going to be talking with Dr. Lemny about a topic we always like to talk about with her, which is self-care in Web3, which is a very important topic. But we're also going to be looking at some of her cool new art using a little bit of AI technology in there and just really interesting vibes. We're also going to be looking at the changing landscape of the social media space. And how that's impacting Web3, how that's impacting NFTs, and maybe the healthiest way to navigate it, because it can seem a bit overwhelming, I think, right now, between Spill and Threads and Twitter's new policies every week and TikTok doing whatever TikTok does. I think it's a very interesting time to be working in the space and to also be aware of the changing landscape. And there's clearly a kind of social media war or something happening right now with a lot of special interests and billionaires basically kind of duking it out over who's going to have the platform to win them all. We like to say here in the Web3 space, it's about abundance over scarcity, and maybe everybody can win, and it doesn't have to be, so confrontational, but seems to be where we're at right now, and we'll see how things shake out. So really interested in kind of hearing about Dr. Lemny's thoughts on that, because I know she's got quite the impressive following on Twitter and also on Instagram, and now with Threads. It's an interesting new avenue, I think. So we'll explore that a little bit. But I wanted to make one point on this before we get into the interview with Dr. Lemny, which is, it is my hope, and I think I've heard this said by a lot of other people in the space too, so I'm not just making this up, that Web3 can actually usher in not just financial sovereignty, but data sovereignty as well, right? And the idea that Web3 with blockchain technology is all about transparency and accountability, right? So data can actually be stored on a blockchain, and on the blockchain in a decentralized fashion. At the very least, it's open to everybody. Now, you could argue that that's less private than a private server, but at least it's accountable, right? It's transparent, and it can be created in a way that each individual actually has their own kind of data in a clear, token or a node on the blockchain, and they can see what's happening with it. So it's my hope that Web3 can actually usher in kind of a new data scenario, because I think that the Web2 way that data has been used and really pilfered and abused, I would say, to really manipulate people, right? So that they know what you like, they know what your interests are, they know how many kids you have, how old they are, all these other random stats that let them kind of send advertisements to you that you're more likely to click on, right? And I get that that's just been the way that things have gone, and maybe it'll continue that way. But it's my hope that Web3 might actually upend that entire kind of misuse of our data. At least that's the way I view it. So we'll see. Maybe Dr. Lemny's got some thoughts on that, but I just wanted to leave the audience with that little tidbit of, let's try to push back against this idea that we don't have sovereignty over our data, right? That we all just, click the boxes and accept all of the really intrusive data kind of practices of the typical social media companies right now, right? So it's my hope that society as a whole, and I know governments have been trying to, maybe over trying or not trying hard enough, depending on where you come from. But they've been trying to kind of make sure that there is some accountability with these social media platforms, but that's very difficult on the internet. And I don't know that government is the best way for that to happen, right? Ideally, I think the people lead it and the people demand data sovereignty and not having their data kind of stolen and manipulated. So just going to leave that big conversation on the table and see where we go with the rest of this interview. But I just think it's a really important piece that Web3 can usher in data sovereignty, not just financial sovereignty. And so maybe that will mean a whole bunch of new social media platforms that are much more open and accountable and transparent. So I'm just going to leave it at that. That's my hope when I look at social media and Web3's impact on it. But I also know that the tools that exist right now, whether it's Instagram, definitely Twitter, probably leading the pack. And now you've got Threads and you got Spill and you got a few other competitors coming out. They are very powerful tools, right? And so I'm not saying you shouldn't use the tools, that's for sure. And Dr. Lemny can share a whole bunch about that. So Dr. Lemny, without any other further ado, what's new with you? What's keeping you busy? And welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, David. And thanks so much for that synopsis about, what kind of where we're at in the space when it comes to kind of like data security, accessibility to like ownership, right? About everything that we're putting out. And, I was, I'm still in the space, I've not left, nice. I try to kind of like be as participative, as possible, and not just kind of like in my own kind of like headspace, when it comes to like the creative process, but, to be an active community member and to be abreast, and one of the folks was talking about how like, a lot of these platforms, we're supposed to be leveraging them to come back to our own kind of like homes, like bring them back to your website. Like, this it's really kind of like a traffic stop. It's like, okay, hey, how's it going? All right, let's go over here now, And so like people have been kind of like using it as a space to kind of like pitch a tent, and hang up, and pop up their shop and stuff, and like and do it that way. And so I think that when creators become more intelligent about their ability to kind of like leverage and manage their kind of like intellectual property, that's the word I was looking for.
Sure.
Then they can kind of like use these platforms in a way that's more conducive for their aspirations.
Most definitely. And we've seen people doing that to very good effect, including yourself and many others. But when you look at the town, I like the kind of the stop, right? The idea that it should just be a stop, kind of directing your collectors or your audience or whatever to your main page, to your main collection, maybe if you're trying to sell NFTs. But do you think that the social audio side of things has made that better, like made it more of like, you set up your little shop and maybe 10 people come around and you're able to kind of talk about your shop and everything you sell in your shop? And how do you see that evolving? Like, do you think that whether it's Twitter Spaces or Clubhouse, like that the social audio piece of it is a good thing for Web3 and will continue to be kind of heavily relied upon for NFT collections and Web3 builders in general?
I think all of it has its like all of it has its utility and purpose, like, and it all is going to kind of like make sense and be useful at different points in time, so like I think that like it's kind of like we don't throw away Facebook. Like that still has its, for all intents and purposes, like we still go over there when we need it for whatever it is that we need to kind of like utilize it for. And so it's kind of like things get reinvented, and tools kind of like get, repurposed, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. Before we get too far down the social media rabbit hole, let's look a little bit at your art. I'm very curious about the process behind some of your new art. It seems like you've leaned into the AI a little bit. I know you had your kind of Subway series, which I think you're still working on a bit. But on Tezos here, I'm looking at your Tezos page, and you got Maya Angelou, you got a Mike Tyson piece. What's some of the inspiration behind some of your more recent art pieces here?
Thank you so much, David. So this is fun. I love this part of the conversation. I mean, obviously the art part, right? So the AI, as we've seen, it feels that it has been massively adopted, by a significant population of our human community. And so I'm no stranger to that. And so like one of the things that's really interesting to me is to kind of like do a little bit more, and to just put my touch, because like it starts to look the same, and so like what are you conceptually trying to convey? What are you communicating with the art? And so for me, like it was important to kind of like portray this particular image. And thank you so much for collecting, David. I wish I had the bells. I don't, but ding ding ding.
Yes,
Welcome to the
Maya
family.
Angelou as an astronaut definitely jumped out at me. I love it. That's a vibe.
Yeah. Thank you. So like it's Maya Stellar. That's the piece it's called, and so it's about integrating, because Maya was a writer, and I'm a writer as well. And being able to come into this space, into Web3, we know that all of our skill sets, all of our talents, all of our value is brought to the space. And so as a writer, as an artist, as a creative, as someone who meditates, as a futurist, as someone who likes to kind of be in outer space,
Nice.
part of the day.
That's it. Just astral projecting here and there,
Yeah. So like I went in and did that, and so I'm really enjoying the Tezos community and that whole kind of like interaction, because it allows me to forego Ethereum gas prices.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah.
And have fun and still kind of like, trade with people. I just collected a whole bunch of artists. And so that really kind of like, gives me that perspective of being able to kind of like understand what collectors are kind of like, the collector's mind, and what kind of like people are kind of like looking at, and how people buy things. As a psychologist, I'm observing my own mind. Right? And so like that's been kind of cool. Yeah. And not just that, but also being part of someone's another artist, like their trajectory and their kind of like their story. It's really nice to like, I want people to be there for me, so it's kind of like shit goes both ways. Like you can't fake the funk. Like you really have to show up for other people in the community if you want people to show up for you. Like we're not in vacuums, like we're not in silos. And I think that that's one of the lessons that I think that I do really well in the space, and that if you miss that one, you're gonna need it. And in particular, while we're speaking about art, and we're talking about the Subway series, now I've brought the Subway series to look at you retweeting at the same time.
Sorry, just distracting you. Yeah, I'm just scrolling through your art here. Don't mind me.
We are so neurodivergent. I love it.
Yeah.
Of course, like, and that's what I'm talking about. We're like living in like multiple spheres, and then like you add one, and I'm like, all right, I'm feeling threads, and you're able to kind of like show up and present in a different way, and to have people interact and engage, because it's kind of like I always wanted to show my entire artwork, and presented it in a certain way that it looks like gallery-ish. I was like, oh, this looks clean, and David, I'm not the most finesse person with technology. Okay. Like surprisingly. All right.
That is surprising, actually. Sure took over Twitter pretty quickly.
Yes. That's just because I came in during a bull. Yeah. Like, let's not forget causes and conditions. Like, I think it's really important for people to understand, like, like when you came in, and so like right now with threads, like if you're coming in early, like you're going to be able to kind of like, make a mark. If you kind of like work it and understand the technology and how that algorithm works. I'm not getting it. It's day 3, we're still like learning and shit, like I was like, all right, I'm doing okay. Like I'm treading water here, but all of that to say is that these are opportunities to kind of like continue to, engage in community in different ways that we were kind of like hindered or limited, because of the limitations of time and space,
Yeah. No doubt. On that point you were making about being an artist and collecting other artists, and I think you spoke on this a little bit earlier today in the narrative conduit, but maybe you could repeat a little bit of the point, because I think it was really interesting and important. Because myself, like, I've put a little bit of photography on the blockchain, but I haven't really tried to sell anything, and I don't even consider myself an artist in the traditional sense, and I love the other part you talked about when you buy someone's art and now you feel like you're part of their story, right? That's the part that's hooked me in for sure. And just not just that, but seeing the impact that it makes on that artist, like that you're actually helping them pay their bills. You're actually helping them invest in a school in Ghana, to like build something that's going to impact people's lives, so that's what's definitely hooked me in. But for yourself as an artist who then went and like collected other artists and started thinking, oh, this is how collectors think. Like, I've been thinking in my artist hat, but as a collector, it's a little bit different. You got budget, you got maybe different aesthetics you're looking for, whatever it might be. So maybe explain that a little bit. How's that experience been for you? And why do you think it's important?
For sure, for sure. Thank you so much, and my bad for interrupting there at the end. Yo, it's been soul integration. So I gotta tell you because it's kind of like I was like, oh, I've been taking it personally this whole time, you know, it's not been
Yeah.
about me, you know.
Yeah.
So it allows me really, David, to kind of like take an objective perspective and to go in with my kind of like my manager's hat, you know, and my administrative hat, and be like, all right, this is this is how I can organize the sales to make this appealing, to someone who's purchasing things. Like, we're in the real world now, like
Yeah.
it's not like my fantasy bubble of like, my art is like, if you're not paying this, like, well, what do you mean I'm not worth that much, so like
Right.
now I'm thinking about like diversifying and going into merchandise, and like, doing things that are going to like real world things, right, that are going to be appealing to people. And not just that, but also providing value to collectors. I love when I get anything for free. An airdrop for me, I was like, yay! Like, I don't
Yeah.
care if it's worth nothing,
Yeah. I'll take that for sure.
Everybody gets hyped. So like, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and the people who collected for me on Object, and you're getting one coming too.
Let's go.
So like, like just go ahead and do that, because and someone in one of the rooms today also was talking about how like that also solidifies like who you are on the blockchain. Is like, it's not just an empty wallet, now it's kind of like,
Yeah.
it's a stamped, that
Yeah.
like there's an interaction and a dynamic that like, there's a back and forth, there's a flow, and then when we have that type of movement, David, spiritually, energetically, whatever it is, like you're bringing in abundance, and like you're not stagnant anymore. And so like I feel like I've brought that into kind of like my process now on the blockchain, which is super dope, as an artist, as a collector now, right? I was like,
Yeah.
now I got like these 13 artists that I'm like following. I'm like, all right, I gotta retweet them,
That's
and like all
awesome.
these other things that I want to like invest in them in that way. And I'm like, yeah, like I spent like one tez on them or whatever. Like that's not
Yeah,
what it is.
exactly.
That's not what it's about in the blockchain. Like, that's not what we're cultivating here. So, and speaking of like cultivating stuff too, and I signed up for innovative labs and stuff. So what they're doing is they're having a cohort of like about 170 NFT artists, right?
Oh wow.
And creatives. So people are getting together. And so what that is we're gonna learn how to do dynamic NFTs. Okay, so like I really want to get into like stepping up my game. I don't just want to give you like an NFT. You're just like, okay, that's cute to look at. Like I want to give you an NFT that come Christmas time is gonna change colors. Is gonna give you this. Is gonna talk about that. Like,
Gonna play Jingle Bells for you.
yes, sir. Like all that. Like I'm like, oh shit, this is fun. So it's nice to kind of like go through it in a cohort. So we'll be there for like a couple of weeks, and then there's gonna be like about 20 artists that are gonna get selected to like do a show again at the Oculus here in New York City. So I was like, yo, I'm here. Pick me.
Nice. There you go.
So
Let's go.
we'll see. But any all that to say, David, is that there's so much opportunity and so much like untapped territory in the NFT space and NFT world as artists, as creatives. So I'm here for it, fam. I'm not going nowhere.
That's what's up. I love it. And looking at Tezos, like I was just browsing a little bit of your collection that you've collected now, and there are awesome art pieces you've got here. Very, very good choices. Tezos, I know you mentioned obviously the gas fees aren't as high as Ethereum, but when you look at like the aesthetic of it, just the general vibe of the community, like how do you feel about Tezos, and is there a reason like outside of the cost like that you've been attracted to Tezos? Because there's like Solana, there's a couple others that have like no fees pretty much, and they exist too, but what attracted you to Tezos?
Yeah, no, definitely. I want to go everywhere. Like
Yeah.
I've always been chain agnostic.
For sure.
It's all about like pushing like the culture of sovereignty forward. Whatever chain that is. And so definitely like when it comes to Tezos, like actually my initial like my genesis collection on the blockchain was actually had a couple pieces on Hicketnunk. So I've been on Tezos. I'm an OG over there. Yes, I got some like, so check them out. They're on there.
Nice.
But I just have to carry them over so that they can be active and for sale.
Right.
I haven't figured that shit out yet. Anyway, but all of that is kind of like, what's wonderful about the blockchain again is that kind of like, in 2021, like I'm not just starting a fad, because everybody went to Tesla. It's like, these are ideologies, and paradigms that, I had in my mind, that were values to me, and that I just circle back around to, so we're keeping it real.
No
David.
doubt. That's what's up. I went and checked your earliest Tezos pieces, and those are really cool, really colorful. I like Nah, I'm Good. That's a good one.
Thank you. Yeah,
Very
the style
cool.
changes too, right? You can see that as well.
No doubt. Yeah,
Yeah.
style change. That's what's up. Evolving, adapting, trying different things. Very cool. Very cool. So looking at the Subway series, which you do a mix, it looks like, right, of incorporating AI, and then you have some that you've just kind of done some hand sketches of. How's that going, and how do you kind of envision it evolving into the future? You're not minting them that much, right? The Subway ones at this point?
No.
So it's just
No,
kind of
no,
more of a
no.
little bit of a
Holding
creative
on to 'em.
exercise, kind of like a sketch.
Like-
Is it like a
Yeah.
creative exercise, like a sketch or something?
Yes. Thank you. And again, I get excited, so apologies for speaking over you.
You're good.
And yeah, so basically, what I'm doing is, all this work comes to me, David. It's really interesting because the ones that are on Hicketnock, right? That came like right before, like during the pandemic. Like that was like the digital work that I was working on before I came into NFTs, and that was kind of like the body of work that I presented when I did like my Genesis, because it was just like right on the cusp. And like I'll get these downloads of like these episodes, right? Like if you're an artist, like when the moon comes,
Yeah.
man, I'm not lying to you, brother. Like it just happened like this past weekend, right? Everybody was like, having a fit with Elon because he was like putting all those, like, blocking everybody. And I was here in Brooklyn, house sitting for my friend, and going to town, like under the guise of the moon, and went to town and, did a collection of the Subway series extended, right? Of these women in collage. I painted them. I did them in just a variety of mediums. I sketched them. I had them as well with why am I always forgetting pastels? And I also digitally, drew them. And so it's just really wonderful to kind of like understand, processes, and to go into that hat as an artist, and to kind of like bring out work. So what happened too that was super dope this week is that I showed some work at the Heath Gallery in Harlem, and I'm happy about that. So like that the Subway series is kind of like evolving, right? And like I'm bringing work into real life. Essentially, to make a long story short, with the Subway series, where I see that is really I see that as a collection that's going to hit IRL galleries, like I see myself kind of like really doing like huge paintings, and doing more gallery work, doing more IRL stuff in that way. The drawings and the sketching has really kind of like opened up a lot of possibilities that have expanded and have really kind of like generated a shitload of AI also, because like I'm also kind of like, using the collages, and I'm generating them into the AI and spitting out like dope work. And then I want to paint that, so like it's just kind of like the process is
awesome.
continue.
Sounds like it's just like evolution happening in real time, and it's really exciting to see too on your Twitter feed. You're so good at sharing kind of your work in progress, and even just different works that you work on, not just what you're minting, right? How do you feel about the social media wars, to your point, all that stuff happening with Elon? I thought it was kind of crazy. I don't know if those people were even telling the truth after a bit, because I saw like 5 different people talking about Elon blocking them. I was like, there's no way Elon blocked all these people. But maybe he did. I don't know. It's just crazy. But what do you make about all this? Well, first, Twitter. Let's start with Twitter. How are you feeling about Twitter right now?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I feel bad for Twitter. I feel for Twitter the way that I felt for Instagram. No, hold on. I feel for Twitter the way that I felt for Clubhouse when Twitter Spaces came. That's the feeling, because it's kind of like, Dad was like, "Oh, you guys are misbehaving. I'm taking away the toys." And then, then Stepdad was like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "I'm giving them all the toys."
Wow, that's a good analogy.
That's how I see it. And it's kind of like, I was like, we're going with stepdad. You know, he's got all the toys. Like, sorry, you know. And so.
Yeah. So you think Threads is gonna be the new cool kid?
Yeah, it is, because it gives you like fun functions, you know, that are really applicable and relevant for a lot of content creators, you know, and people want to be able to have a certain level of ability to engage and have other people see their work. And have it presented in specific ways, and this app is allowing creators to do that.
Yeah, and what do you think about the impact on Web3? Because I'm seeing, I think, in general, there's a lot of sentiment, a lot of people that are kind of on the anti-censorship stuff, right? And thinking that Twitter's the only place for quote-unquote free speech. I'm not really aligned with that necessarily, but I do think that there's a lot of crypto people kind of aligned with that, right? So I think there are a lot of crypto folks who don't or will just refuse to jump to the Meta platform, right? And then in the Web3 space, I've seen Meta kind of dabbling with NFTs, but not really. And I don't know that they're even like culturally aligned with Web3 and crypto. So those are kind of my two concerns. One, I'm not really as concerned about the censorship side, but more so culturally, how it kind of like splits the culture potentially, right? But then more importantly, I think, is the actual like, does Threads like NFTs? like do they want NFT creators on their platform the way that Twitter frankly embraced NFT creators? You know, they let people actually show their NFTs on the platform, and they have some on-chain connection, you know. So yeah, I'm looking at it that way. And you know me, I'm pretty anti-meta in general, but I see the value in it for sure. And I do think Elon has squandered a lot and made some missteps on Twitter for sure. So how do you think the Web3 community is going to react? And are we getting splintered? Are we getting split up between the two step parents, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I definitely think so, because what's happening, at least my experience, you know, of what Twitter was, you know, that era, you know, and we were talking about it earlier. It's like, I feel like, you know, things have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and everything is kind of like on a trajectory and on a cycle. Right. And so like the cycle of, you know, of Clubhouse was one, and that ended, you know, and then there was a mass exodus to Twitter Spaces, you know, and that then became its own space and its own iteration of what that was, you know, and then that grew to a height in popularity, you know, and that is now currently being challenged. Right. With this, because what we're talking about is attention and where people are spending their time, you know, and so like if you have people that are kind of like building and excited about something novel and new and feels fresh and, you know, kind of like a new opportunity, you know, and that feels to me more cultivating and more generative than going to Twitter Spaces where people are still fucking arguing about the same bullshit, then I'm probably not going to go to Twitter Spaces as much right now, you know? So that's what I'm feeling is what the Web3 space is experiencing. Is kind of like, where do I want to spend my time? You know, it's kind of like, and what feels good to me, you know, what's consistent and aligned with what I'm trying to do. And so for me as an artist, as a creative, you know, I'm not much of a technologist. I'm not so much of, you know, like I love the technology. I love the crypto, but it's not my like, it's not my wheelhouse. You know, and so like I'm not gonna live over there in that section where like I'm king of the house, you know, and that's what Twitter Spaces has become for the crypto humans, you know, for the maxis. And so when you know I made a comment about the bros, you know, and I was like, yo, I'm so happy over here on Threads because at least you're getting a fucking break from that shit, you know. And one of the guys came over, he's like, yo, we're not that bad, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, but do you know? I was like, you could, and I was like, now he knows, he has insight, right? Like, yo, you were dominating, you weren't sharing the fucking space, like that's not what futurists are about. You know, like futurists are about kind of like sharing space and making sure that we're all here, you know, and not just like futurists, it's just kind of like there's a wisdom there, you know, David. Like I think that that kind of like divide and conquer, like you know what it is when people have beef with other people in the community. And this is going back to kind of like the conversation that you initiated about self-care, you know, and having kind of like healthy social relationships with folks, you know, like when you beef with people, like they don't go away. You know, like they're
That's the
still
truth.
around, you
Yeah.
know, like I mean you can block them, you can do this, but like we're still kind of like in the same social environment,
And
right?
especially in
And so like
Web3, it's small, right?
yes, you know, so like how are you gonna kind of like navigate those relationships? It's so critical and so important, you know, to take care of yourself and you know to stay true and rock with yourself. You know,
Yeah.
I think that for me, what's been helpful, you know, and what I see myself kind of like navigating all these new platforms is that I still see the people that I know and they know who I am. You know, like I went. In fact, you know, and I'll talk about going where you're wanted and where you feel good, and
Definitely.
leaving where the fuck you're like, yo, I do not belong here. You
Yeah,
know, 'cause, like,
yeah.
everything is not for everyone, right?
That's it, you know. And I think I missed out, and I think you spoke to this before in another room too, on missing out on NFT opportunities for that specific reason, right? Like I walked into the Bored Ape room way back in those early days, and I was like, this is not a vibe for me. Like this just sounds like a frat house. They're making monkey noises. Like I don't know what's going on here. Like I don't care. Like I'm not spending my money on this. And then you know a couple of months later you realize you lost $10,000 or however many thousands it's at now, you know. But that's c'est la vie, you know.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's kind of like because it wasn't aligned with you, you know, like
Yeah.
it wasn't gonna work for you in the same way. Like, you know, you were gonna mismanage it, or somebody was gonna fucking steal it, or like who knows? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like what's for you is there for you, you know. And so like okay, so case in point, right? I went to because not everything is like roses, David. Like I don't have great experiences everywhere. Get the fuck out of
Course.
here. You know, like
Of
that's not
course.
reality. But we're still here. So I went to Blue Sky. Yo, that was not the spot for me.
No,
You
eh?
know, like
Why?
I
I
went in
just
there.
I just got access, but I've only just made my profile. I haven't really done much, so why not?
Yeah, why not? Because I went on there, I don't know, maybe I want to say maybe 3 months ago when I was like, all right, let's start exploring other stuff and see
Mm.
what's happening. I went over there and I was still kind of like, you know, just because you are someone in one platform doesn't mean people know, you know, and you know, you're like, you're starting fucking fresh and
Mhm.
stuff. And so like I had made a comment about somebody that says something, you know, and like, you know, like you have to remember like, you know, how you come across, what your branding is like, you know, what the impressions of people are, what they're projecting, all these other things, and that you cannot control people's impressions of what it is that you're saying online, particularly when they don't know you, and if you know you're having those moments when you get a little bit comfortable, you know, and you're
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and you say some shit, you're like it's not out of pocket, but you're just like yo, like. I really went in, you know, and I made an opinion, and then there's like, Doc, you need to learn when to shut the fuck up. And I was like, whoa, like that's not, you know, that's not how to talk to somebody. And also, you know, like I get it. You were wounded, you know,
Right,
but
right.
we're not doing this. Like that's
No.
not worth my time and my energy. And I was like, all right, I was like, this is not how we want to get started on this platform. Okay, so
Yeah, that's all it takes, right? One bad experience, you're like, all right, I'm out.
no, I'm telling you, like I had the mob come after me, David, and what's
Oh,
really
shoot.
interesting about this is that like the cancel culture, right? And this is part of Web3 too, you know, like this will happen, you know, is kind of like you know, you show up, you have this persona, and not just the persona, like you know, you're a person. And, you know, you have values and things that you kind of want to purport in this world, you know, and people that you want to kind of like engage with and carry that message and live, you know, live this life together with. And you know, when you're misunderstood, you know, and people don't see you for who you are, then
Yeah.
maybe you don't, you know, like why are you fighting against the grain? Like, you know, and I think that some people stay in very toxic environments for too long, you know, and I think that's what happened in Twitter for a lot of folks, you know, for me included.
Yeah.
Talk about it, man. Like
Twitter
I was
Twitter
like,
got
you
to be
know
a little
what?
bit much, you know, as far as I see it. Just, I mean, I always preferred Clubhouse to your earlier point, you know, like I feel, well, for one, in Twitter, they let maximum 10 or 12 people on stage, and then it's always like the same 10 people, or at least the same like 6 or 8 people, and then maybe they'll rotate out like 1 or 2, and like 90% dudes hyping their coin or hyping their project, their favorite project, and it's just like, I just want to talk about the technology or hear from actual creators doing dope things. You know, I don't want to hear what you think the best coin is or what you think the best project is. It's like, unless I'm hearing directly from the creator of that coin or the creator of the project, maybe that's interesting. Other than that, like, I don't want to hear your FOMO or like telling people to get in here. And it's crazy how many people they get in those rooms. Like, it's like people want to feel the FOMO. It's like they want to like, tell me what I need to buy, tell me what I should spend my money on. It's like, what? Yeah. It's wild how popular those rooms are. It's crazy.
It is wild. Like, it makes you think, you know, because like why are we so attracted to that burn and getting burned, you know, and like that allure, and again, it's kind of like it's kind of like the mirage, you know, of like, you think you're walking through this desert and like that it is gonna save you. It's like, nah, it doesn't exist. Like, that illusion is not there. It's not real. Keep going.
It's not real. It's like gambling. No. It's just not worth your time or energy.
No, like, I mean, and I think that we all kind of like go through it when we come into the space, because we kind of have to learn unless somebody tells you, you know, and then some of us don't learn until we go through the experience ourselves, you know. I remember like I stopped buying projects in 2021. I was like, oh, this is what this shit is. I was like, fuck this. I was like, I'm not doing this. I stopped buying them altogether until recently, you know, that I bought like, you know, these 13 artists, you know, so like, you know, and I had intermittently bought like some projects from like artists as well. Like if something had resonated with me, you know, like there was one by Maya. You know, she's a Cuban artist, and she had done something by RGB, you know, and I was like, RBG. And so I was like, yo, I want to support, you know, a woman artist, be a collector, support her, you know, she's in Cuba, like, let's go, you know, yeah. And so like, and plus like, you know, what she was fundamentally kind of like just pushing, kind of like, you know, just women being, you know, empowered and in positions of leadership and really having a say in what's happening, like. Oh, speaking of having like a say, you know, and just having, you know, being kind of like just this whole field, right? Like of being in life and being participative in your world, right? Like, I was, we're on Threads, and you know, the celebrities are there. It's day 3, you know, and I saw Rachel Maddow had like posted some fucking like bullshit, and I was like, I went up, and I was like, yo, this is not Web 2. You know, yeah. Like, this is not.
Threads is still Web 2, though, unfortunately. Now I'm curious. I want to know what Rachel Maddow's posted about.
You know, I was like, Rachel, do better. Yeah. I was like, yo, like, why are you still reducing? Like, I'm like, you're in a position to like really shift this conversation. Like, why are you attacking extremists? Why are you inciting anger? Like, why is that always like, we don't always have to fight all the time for change to happen, man. Like, yo, we're tired.
Polarized time right now, Dr. Lemny. Shout out to Grayson. He just made a point in the chat. He was saying that the issue with Threads that he sees is that they tie back to your Facebook and your Instagram, right? Or at least your Instagram for sure. And I think it still ties in with Facebook as well. So you end up, you know, if you are going to get political on Threads, it does tie back to your actual personal accounts, which you probably just have family and friends on, right? So it's like, it's not quite the independent voice maybe that Twitter is, but at the same time, it's definitely innovative, and it's going to be interesting to see, you know, whether it lasts for the long haul. Appreciate the input, Grayson. It's a good point.
Absolutely.
So on this whole, you know, hubba, like just everything happening in social media, how do you think those of us who want to kind of push Web3 forward should be kind of navigating the space? Because on one hand, definitely be everywhere, right? That's kind of the best marketing advice. But on the other hand, that can be really overwhelming, you know, and talking about self-care, mental health, you know, and I think you might have answered this when you said, you know, go where you're wanted. But also, I think everybody wants to be wanted everywhere. So it's like, how do you pick, you know, the platform? It's just getting to be so much. What's your advice to folks navigating the space?
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. And speaking of want, right? And to Grayson's point, like, I think it all ties in, because what's happening right now, because I'm seeing it happen with myself, right? Psychologically is an integration of all my beings, right? Like who I am on Facebook and how I show up, and the people that I interact with are getting to see who I am with the people on Twitter, and then on the people on Threads. And so like all those worlds are converging, and getting yoked together like a yoga, right? And we're getting so actualized.
Right. There you go.
So like this is what's happening, David, is that people are forced to contend that parts of our lives that we thought were isolated and separate. Well, yes, that we have all these different, boxes and like, compartmentalized, parts of life. Like who I am as a psychologist never touches, like, how I am here in the Web3, like, how I show up as a therapist in Web3, and that part of my identity is very different, when I'm sitting, in therapy with a client, a patient, or someone that I'm serving, right? So I think that to what you were saying, we want to be wanted everywhere. But what I meant by that is to go where you're having engagement, and you're having engagement in a real way that's transcending to what intention and purposes you're trying to achieve. So like what are you getting? Like, yo, if you want attention and that's all the fuck you want, yo, go to the space that's like giving you all the likes. That's what's happening in those Twitter spaces. That's what's going on for those dudes, right?
Yeah.
Like, yo, they get off on that fucking like ego shit, So like, good for them. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, and then you have people like, fuck that. Yo, I need the money. I need this to translate to that. And then I'll see those motherfuckers, on Threads that already got this fucking machine going, yo.
Yeah.
They already know how
There's
to translate that shit.
some people gung-ho on there for sure.
What? Yo, it's like they already know how to make that shit into money. It's like they're already talking to people, like they're already making sales. I was like, yo, like everybody has a different hustle, and a different wants and a different desire. So like again, like now you cannot be everywhere. No, like that's not like that's another delusion. But like we're not going to conquer all the spaces. I mean, if that's what you want, then, go for it. Try it. Good luck.
Right.
Like, I wish you all the best. But, for me, in my experience, again, going back to that is like whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, flex and leverage these platforms. Don't let them fucking run you, and don't let the people who are on there run you either. Like, I know that we work in community and in dynamics with like other creatives, and we're like constantly like looking to the side when like running these races and shit, but like, we could be these horses that are like, just focus.
Yeah, just
and
focus
I'm
on
like,
your own track.
like, you stay in your lane, and you won't get in a car accident.
There you go. Don't burn out. Like, don't get in an accident. Just stay focused on your lane. Just keep
go deeper. Yeah, like the Subway series has given me some focus, as an artist and kind of like as a creative, like I think that people need to have something that like, that's giving them what's the word, anchoring, because it's kind of like the space flips us up and around, and we're like in a wave, David, and like we don't know which way is up half the time. And so it's really important to kind of like have a point of locus and focus, for your mental health and your mental wellness, for sustainability, because people, we're all seeing each other and we're watching each other evolve and grow, and we're all learning and growing from each other. So definitely, showing up, and shining your light and trying to kind of like, be the best version of yourself in public. Because we are public people in Web3. We're not living a quiet lives. These are very public lives. So that's
is true, and it's not easy, and that's honestly been probably one of the hurdles I've seen when trying to onboard new people. Right, is the idea that you do kind of have to be more public if you want to make it worth it. Right, if you want to find collectors, you want to sell your work on the blockchain, you have to tell people who are on the blockchain who you are and what you do. And I think a lot of artists are used to or even musicians too, hand it to a gallery, hand it to a record label, and they do the promotion, they do this and that for you, and they take their massive cut, and they feel justified doing so because they helped you sell your stuff. But this is really flipping that all on its head, right? And saying you got to kind of go get yours and you'll make it, but it takes time. There's no overnight. Yeah, there's no overnight success, right? So on that point about kind of sticking to your lane or sticking to kind of your vision and go where you think, you know, best aligns with your vision. Do you think it's kind of like a get in where you fit in kind of scenario, right? Like people who, like, for example, have been finding success in the PFP space are going to continue hosting these spaces and having people come, and even though most of the audience probably haven't found the same success as the hosts have, but they'll still listen because it sounds interesting, and these people made a bunch of money on these, so it must be good, right? So I think, you know, one of my favorite philosophies is just to each their own, right? Yeah. So the old hip hop adage of get in where you fit in, I think makes sense a lot in Web3, right? I think it's like, it's easy to judge people because what they're doing seems a little grimy, it seems whatever, but ultimately they're going to do what they found success doing, right? And, you know, just kind of chips fall where they may. So how do you think that kind of plays out when looking to the future? You mentioned sustainability, right? Like, are we on a sustainable path? For Web3?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, thank you so much for that question, because I think that everyone has a different idea of what that is for them. You know, like, you know, like I think that people are starting, and you know, and folks are in different timelines, right? Like in their trajectory of how they move and shift and develop and engage with community, grow in community, develop a community, you know, all of that stuff. So like what I'm noticing is that for sustainability purposes, you know, you were talking about how like people before like are used to kind of like handing it over, you know, and someone else taking care of it for you, and I'm now learning, you know, I'm glib. You know, I'm not I'm not always the sharpest tool. You know, I got 5 degrees. I got a lot of shit to learn still, David.
We all do. We all do.
You know, like, yo, there's people who have managers. There's artists who have managers in Web3.
Oh,
okay?
Wow. Yeah, I could see
They're not doing this shit by them fucking selves, all right? So, like, I thought, you say, a little Pollyannish over here. So, to all that to say is that I think people are learning to delegate. You know, people are learning to get help. People are learning to understand that, you know, there's limitations to what you can do. You know, that it's okay to get support. You know, and that you don't have to do it all by yourself. So people are kind of like growing in that way. You know, that I can be sovereign, and you know, I can be an entrepreneur, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to do everything by myself. You know, like who does? You know, that's a delusion. Where, and so that's where kind of like that whole conversation with community comes in, right? And how that really is evoked, you know. And so I think that for me, where I'm shifting now is I really I want to engage more with collectors. You know, like before, like I just like engage with the whole Web3 space. I was like, hey, we're here, what's up? You know, but now I kind of like, I want to have a relationship, and you know, I'm like, what do you like about this work? Let's talk about my work. Like, you know, like what is it about? You know, like have my own little world now. And let me tell you, I was hesitant, David, because everybody's like, when we were on Clubhouse, it's like, Lem, how come you don't have your thing? And I was like, yo, I'm tired. Like, because I was
have
still
a Discord, right? You need to have a Discord server.
All of that. It was like, you need to have your Telegram, you need to have a back channel, and have your group going on in the back of Twitter. And I was like, yo, I'm not ready for that, and it wasn't time for me, David. You know, like, and so like now I was like, oh, I'm like, now that I'm kind of like collecting and I'm following these people, I was like, I'm invested. Like, I was like, all right, what are the things that I want to do for these collectors, that I want to do for these artists? You know, so like now I'm finessing.
Yeah,
you know,
awesome.
the
and you mentioned you're doing airdrops for your Tezos collectors right now, right?
Yes, sir. I'm giving back. You know, like I'm always giving back, you know, but I'm giving back on the blockchain, you know, in a way that is resonant to the community, because I've been giving back energetically with love.
So much.
Yeah, but like, you know, like people want tangible things as well, you know, and I, you know, I'm the mom that gives you love. I'm not always the mom that gives you shit, you know, like, and so like,
not
I
buying
have
the
to
video games for the kid, right?
You know, I gotta get back into like my material, you know, part of like my, you know, of my spiritual shit, you know, and I gotta be integrated. And I'm like, all right, here's a couple airdrops, here's some art, you know, like, you know, come Christmas, like I'm gonna do a couple whatever it is, you know, like I'm looking forward to like, you know, doing stuff for people that's let's do a one-on-one. How you doing? Let's check in. Like, let me give you a tune-up.
Yeah, no doubt. No, it's
So,
amazing. And I think that's part of the magic of Web3 as well, right? Like in the traditional art space, there were some galleries wouldn't even tell you who bought your art, right? Like you don't even get to know who your collectors are. Now, not only do you know, but you have like access to their wallet at any moment. You can just drop something in there for them. You could, do whatever, or just keep a database of all the wallets who have collected your NFTs. And now you have a list of, people that have resonated with your art in the past that you can go back to and let them know, hey, I got a drop and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's that two-way opportunity in Web3 is huge, right? And so that's a great point, and it's awesome that you're taking advantage of the airdrops. And have you got a lot of feedback on that yet, or is there? Yeah, how's that?
Oh my God, I feel bad, man. Like, I got my Excel sheet going, everything. Everybody's like, "Yo, what took you so long?" I dropped them in people's wallets. I think it was maybe Friday, and someone had tweeted about it today. She's like, when you watch a pot boil, like ultimately, like it brews,
Yeah.
like. So like I was just I was slow to warm, slow to hatch, but finally, did my debut and gave back in that way, and I intend, to make that a bigger practice.
No, that's amazing.
I gotta figure it out on Ethereum how to, do
I was
it
gonna
over
ask, have you looked into like doing a manifold kind of thing where you first do like an open edition or something, right? And anyone who buys your art, now you can turn around and do an airdrop to them as well, right? But yeah, Ethereum, obviously, like you said, it's got some gas fees and everything associated to it. Even when you want to give an NFT for free, it's like $20 for the person collecting it. So gas fees are a thing for sure. That's exciting though, and it's really good that you're taking advantage of that kind of opportunity to really give back on the NFT side, as opposed to just through education and awesome meditation sessions that you host and things like that. How are things looking on that side, on the spiritual side, on the community leadership side, on the educational side? What are you doing now in Web3, and where can people find you, and how are you finding it?
Sure. No, thank you so much for that. Like, that's the part, David, that I think that's been happening for me. Like, I think I became an artist finally, and as an artist, like, I was like, yo, now I gotta take care of my collectors. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I was like, what do you think you are? Like, you're not just out here, teaching, like, and not just only like teaching, but like really like loving and supporting and making sure that people are like, all right, because like, yo, if you're not okay, I'm gonna feel it, and it's not just more than just transactional at this point. Like, yo, we've been here as an ecosystem, as a community. Like, this is the year 3, for me, and so with all that, like, you look out for each other, and so folks can still find me, and I'm looking forward to doing more coaching one-on-one. I know that when we were together, the Dream Conduit, I was doing a lot of that, and that I had that platform to be able to support people with, so I would like to continue to do that for artists, and do that a little bit more formally. So hopefully I'm putting out projects that are going to be specifically like legitimate. This is a course that we're gonna do.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like, like it's just, there's a lot of opportunity here, so people can find me in that way. But I think that there's always gonna be shifts in how we kind of like show up in the space. So
are you doing regular Twitter Spaces or any of those kind of social audio?
Yeah, spaces? So I did a collectors connect space with Liana and oh my gosh, yo, why do I always do that when people ask me for names and then like
it happens. I'm bad with names too.
Completely.
I love Liana though. We got mutual friends.
Zico and Liana. That's what it was. Okay, Zico. He's an amazing collector, and I respect his eye, man, and I've been watching him collect since jump. And he's always been selective, and and he's a DJ, but he also collects art. And so like we were able to have that conversation, and I hope for me doing the spaces again, like it's draining. Like it's a lot. So like I'm hoping to do them maybe once a month, and that goes back to self-care. It's like, like I know that the space in the community, like we need those vibes, we need that energy, that positivity, and just kind of like getting together and kumbayaing and like, all right, let's bring both sides, of these warring, facts together, and try to kind of like have a healthy, conducive space where people can kind of like learn, voice, and just be together. So yeah,
that's what it's all about, hosting space, pushing the entire web3 ethos kind of forward, right? It's exciting. And are you dabbling in the metaverse at all yet, and looking at this social media conversation that we talk about, right? Like, do you think that there's a future where people are just like meeting and talking in the metaverse? I mean, obviously it still have some kind of thread or Twitter type of style where you can have like a message board or something, but do you see the metaverse basically taking off, like becoming more of a meeting place, becoming more used, basically more alive? And have you thought about it yourself at all as a creator?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Dave, for that question, because I think so. I would like it to be the case, like, especially with how the technology is moving and like the new glasses and all that stuff. I was like, wait, like it's moving forward. Like, people are pushing, and so there's interest. I see some artists that are doing AR. I love AR, and so I was just like, I want to do that, and that's metaverse stuff.
AR is very cool.
Yo, like that shit is dope to me. I was like, anybody that sees that, it's like, where are we? Like, this is Back to the Future shit, So like, it's super cool. But when I think of the metaverse, so yes, I'm part of this DAO. It's called Ashe DAO. And the people who kind of like are mostly Latin American and Hispanic American coming out of Spain, and they have a lot. They have like it's mostly Afrofuturistic Spanish speaking DAO, which is super fucking dope.
Wow,
dope to find, and so like I've hosted a couple of spaces in the metaverse with them, with some really activists, like socio-political, fucking Antifa, like, left,
a little bit on the left side.
On the deep end, like people who've been in that struggle and in that process for 25 years, artists that are artists who are are politically oriented, and their messages are very are just dope in that way. So I've been able to, engage and be exposed to that community. And so they've been using the metaverse, and not staying behind, and bringing in, speaking to artists and collectors, that are kind of like, speaking about, those issues and creating community around those topics.
And so you do see it as a good community building tool, and you're seeing communities kind of use it for their own purposes, right? It's not about like needing the public to be there. It's like, is our crew ready to jump into the metaverse and talk about, social awareness or whatever the topic might be, right?
Yeah, no, and it's fun, like for all intents and purposes, like I think that it's a socially interactive way, I think that people need to be playful, so it provides that opportunity for us to be adults, who can kind of like suspend reality for a hot minute and talk about difficult conversations or hot topics, about what's going on in society, and talk about art and things like that, and appreciation, and like flex your new fidgetals, and we're like, yo, I got these.
Future. Are you dabbled in the fidgetal lane at all yet? Are you going to be selling some prints to go along with your NFTs or what?
Like I've made some masks, and I had like when I had done like I had done this one collection on that I had dropped on Known Origin, and Nyla had collected one of them.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, Nyla's one of
Shout out to the long necky ladies.
It is, yeah. I'm one of her collectors too. So like, you see what I'm talking about, the ecosystem.
Exactly.
So I had promised Nyla that I was gonna drop a mask of that art. because I've been, I was wearing it in my stories and stuff on Instagram, but I never got a chance to like drop it. So things like that, that you put that into your unlockables. And bringing it back to 2021 when we had those unlockable conversations, man. Yeah. David, we've seen a lot, my brother.
Been a lot, yeah, and the evolution continues. I think we'll continue to see a lot, like your point on AR, whether it's the metaverse evolving. You also talked about dynamic NFTs. We kind of breezed over. That's another very interesting space, right? The idea that you can actually make it so your NFTs are evolving and changing as you want them to, based on time, based on an event happening, based on a certain collector or a certain number of collectors collecting the NFT. It can change a certain way. Do you have a specific kind of view towards how you want to use dynamic NFTs besides the Christmas one that you mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely see like utility to it, and so like in terms of like I see it like it would be cool to like and I'm always tying things back to kind of like wellness and like how can people chill more, so like if like the NFT is picking up on what the weather is like, then it'll unlock like a couple of tips for that day, on like the day is whack, you're gonna do X, Y, and Z, like Dr. Lemny says, put on some yellow because that's gonna make you get happy. Nice. Put on some like strobe lights, just put this music on because that's gonna hype you up. So like, all right, the day is looking like whatever it is, or today I'm feeling blah blah blah. What does Dr. Lemny say about how I'm feeling right now? Like shit like that, David. Like that would
awesome.
Be cool.
That's super dynamic.
Thank you.
That's like actually incorporating therapy and self-help, or self-care tips into your NFTs. That's really cool. Right. And then make it based on what they're doing, based on the weather, based on what the collector's thinking. That's really cool. Very cool. I'm excited. I can't wait to see them.
Thank you, fam.
Awesome. So we're hitting the 1 hour mark here as we wind down. I just want to know what's next for Dr. Lemny. What are you most excited about kind of around the corner, and what can we look forward to?
Yeah, thank you so much, David. I always appreciate coming on here because you let me take up space.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Deep dive.
And it's been fun, man. Like right now I'm working on self-publishing. So here's what's happening. You asked me about this dynamic NFT. I'm self-publishing this book based on my artwork. So that's something that's in the work. I don't want to give too much away.
For sure.
But because a lot of things are in the works. But all that to say is that this self-published book is going to be related to this dynamic NFT. All of this is coming together in one. All of that is being related to my Subway series. All of those things are integrated into really one wonderful project. So I'm happy about the book. I've got an editor already. I've got people that I'm working with. Dominican Writers Association. They're gonna support me with pushing the book out. So shouts out to Dominican Writers. Really a wonderful hub for people who who need to where representation, it matters, man. Like I found my editor there, and like I don't need to translate my Spanglish. Like she knows exactly what I'm talking about. So like these are resources that we have that are available to us. So that project is coming together. So thank you so much. I can't wait to show you what I got. Yeah. And I hope that people enjoy it and I'm looking forward to doing more of IRL stuff, showing my work in more galleries, looking at more residencies, and just really cultivating myself as an artist and continuing to develop my craft, and to kind of like evolve with the space in all these different realms of being and personhood. Hopefully taking a retreat in Canada in August with one of my llamas. Let's go.
August, are you going to Toronto? I'm gonna be in Toronto in August.
Are you?
Yeah, there's the Blockchain Futurist Conference on August 15th, I think it is.
Yo, I think I might just have to see you there, my friend.
Let's go.
Yo, let's go. Let's cross on wood. Thank you for putting that in my radar. I'm gonna look at that because it's in that area.
Okay.
So
All right. Well, we'll stay in touch. That'll be pretty cool to connect in Canada. I haven't been able to meet any of the Web3 natives in Canada yet. I got to meet Kush out there as well. He's the only other fellow Canadian. Well, and
NFTP.
And I was just going to say NFTP Clarina, she's just a few kilometers north of me in Gimli. So we're actually in the same province even, but I haven't been able to connect with her yet IRL. But one day I got to get her on the podcast too. She's another one who's doing amazing work, you know?
She's dope, but she just got collected and highlighted by one of the people who just was in Sotheby's. I forget his name, but shout out to her. And then shout out also to the other Canadian up there who I appreciate and love, Miss Lindsay. Another one, Infinite Mantra, who does really fucking dope work with all that spiritual stuff. She's in Nova Scotia, you know. So you got
more Canadians in the space than I do. I think the names ring a bell, but I don't think I've spoken to them directly the way you've got the human connection with them, because you're so good at connecting with people, Dr. Lemny. It's amazing.
I appreciate you.
Well, that's cool. That'll be amazing if we can connect in Canada. I do appreciate everybody who's tuned in. It's been an amazing conversation, Dr. Lemny, as always. Really rewarding. Lots of gems you've dropped, lots of good tips for builders and creators in the space in Web3. And we'll continue to build and be in here in the space. Let us know if you have any questions. We'll be on Twitter and around on Clubhouse. But yeah, really excited and looking forward to continuing to build. Please do follow us, Web3 Warriors on Twitter, Web3 Warriors on all the podcast networks. Follow, tune in. Appreciate everybody. Until next time, we will catch you all in the metaverse. Peace out. Thank you, Dr. Lemny.
Peace out, fam. Thank you so much. Let's go.